Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be doing an absolutely monstrous PC build based around the Intel 12900K. This has very kindly been sent out by Scam, and we're going to be doing a build that's going to be the highest spec of the channel yet, and pretty much of all the parts that I have on hand. This PC is going to be capable of gaming, video editing, content creation, practically anything you throw at it. This is going to be an all well-rounded system. So this video is going to be a step-by-step for anyone that's looking to actually build a 12th gen system, as we've got a new socket type with LGA 1700 and also DDR5 memory with this motherboard. So we're going to walk you through all the parts and explain them a little bit more as we go. Okay, so we're going to put all the parts into the motherboard and then we're going to get that into the case. For our processor, we're going to be using the Intel 12th gen 12900K, which is a 16-core 24-thread beast. It's got 8 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores with a maximum turbo of 5.2 GHz. And this is going to be going into the Z690 Maximus Hero from ASUS ROG Gamers. I've done an overview video on this motherboard, absolutely feature packed, if you want to check that out in a bit more detail. Then we're going to use the golden arrow on the bottom left, which will correspond with what's on the cover. Now these processors are now rectangular as well, and generally speaking the text will read the right way up. So we'll lift the socket and put this in. Doesn't need any insertion force. Give it a little bit of a wiggle, and then we'll put the cover down. A little bit more pressure on the new socket as it's a bigger socket. Then the cover comes off. Make sure you keep that in case you need to RMA the board. That's our processor installed. So now we'll move on to our SSD. This is a Seagate FireCuda 530 series. This is a 1TB variant, and it's actually one of the fastest drives that the team at Scan have tried. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how fast this is going to go in our system. So we're going to use the top cover on our Hero motherboard. So this board has got double-sided thermal pads, so make sure you take off the protective little bit of plastic. So we'll put it into the left-hand side, and we'll gently push it down and then turn our little latch, and it's installed. I really do like that on these boards. There's no little fiddly screws, nice little simple latch. So for the top heatsink, we're going to take the plastic off again, and then we can put this back down. Just line it up and then just get it screwed down. So for memory, using a kit that has been kindly sent out by Kingston, this is a Fury 32GB kit of 2 16GB sticks. This is 6000 megahertz at cast latency 40, and we're going to install these into slots 2 and 4, the furthest away from the processor. Check your motherboard manual just in case it's different, but typically it slots 2 and 4 if you're using 2 sticks. So we'll pop this back. Going to make sure the notch is the right way around. Slot it in and then wait till we get some clicks. And same again. And that's 2. So that's 3 main parts installed into the motherboard. Now I'm going to get our cooler and we're going to look at that and get our backplate and everything sorted out, so it's easier when we go to install it in the case. So for our cooler, we're going to be using the new Corsair H170i Elite LCD. This is the 420mm model, but we do have smaller ones for 360 and a 240 if you're using a smaller case. I'm going to be using the 420mm variant for this video, but first we need to get our backplate and things sorted out. So future Jordan here, going to be redoing this part as I had an audio problem with the original video. I'm going to be using a different board, but the principle for doing it on the Hero will be the exact same. So this is our backplate. This supports everything from 1366 to 11.5x 1700 as well. There is some adhesive on there if you want to stick it to your backplate, but as we're going to be reusing that, I'm going to keep it on mine. We're also going to need to find the Intel 1700 standoffs in the box, and also the top nuts, which are actually going to be in the miscellaneous bag. So all we need to do for this is turn our motherboard over, and then we're going to be using the wider slots for 1700. I'm just going to wiggle this around till we find the right holes. Now ASUS motherboards, some of them do have the option to use the older mounting holes with the newer motherboards, but I would recommend that you use the 1700 kit if you've got it, because the IHS does have a higher mounting pressure on the 12th gen over the older style. So flipping this back over, you can now see the backplate threads just poking through. So we're going to take our 1700 standoffs and just screw these in finger tight. This part can be a little bit tricky as the more premium ASUS motherboards have got a big old VRM heatsink. So, you know, just take your time with it. And there we go, so that's our backplate now fully installed and secure. Now we need to do a little bit more prep on the AIO in our case to then get it ready to take this. So I've got our case up on the desk. This is the Phanteks Etho 2 Pro. It supports the 420mm radiator in the front So we're going to need a big case to go for this big radiator. You can obviously get a smaller cooler if you want a bit of a smaller form factor. This actually supports a dual build that we're going to be doing soon as well. So that's another reason we're using this case. But we need the space for the long boy radiator, so we should be putting it in the front. I'm going to put the fans on the front of this case as we've got a nice mesh front panel. So I'm going to put the radiator in and then hold the fans and screw through the case into the radiators for this one. Now for ease of use, I've just taken the top cover off of the pump, which is the LCD part, and it's got all the cables actually built in. So it makes it a little bit easier because there's nothing dangling once we install the actual radiator, so a little bit easier. So these are our ML140s that come with this cooler. Of course, you'll have different sizes with the different options of cooler if you get a smaller one, but this will fit like so. We're going to put them on this side, so we'll see the nice RGB, and like I said, go through that mesh front. So we'll put all these like this. We're going to have to balance them on the radiator until we actually get them screwed in. I'm going to get the cables going out this side of the case, so I'm going to rotate them the right orientation, so we're not going to have any excess cable that we don't need being visible. So these will all go around this way. An easy way to tell which way these are going to go, there is a little arrow on the fan there which will point the airflow direction, and we're going to have it going through this way. So I have our radiator screws all out. These are actually all the same length because there's no fins underneath where the screw holes are now, so you can't accidentally puncture a fin as you go through if you use the wrong size. So these are all going to be the same, so we're just going to grab a washer for a couple of screws just to get the radiator in, and then we can wiggle the fans about and adjust it to screw it in. A bit of a balancing act to get this installed, but thankfully the fans have rubber on as well, which kind of helps them grip to the sort of surface they're on as well. Now if you're struggling with this bit, just take your time. It's quite tricky to get the fans located, especially when you're trying to do this many fans on a radiator in one go. So once you get those four corners put in, it's really smooth sailing from there on. You can obviously put as many as you want in the middle, but I'm going to do 4 around the middle fan. It kind of gives a bit more support then for the whole of the radiator. There we go. Now we can get the cables through, get the cable ties off, and then we'll put a motherboard in. So I've got the case laid flat, ready for our motherboard to go in. Now Fantecs include a nice case that's got an organised segmented screw set with some of their more premium cases. I really like the way this is all laid out. It's really quite satisfying. But we're going to find our motherboard screws, which are going to be these ones in the top left segment. Now before we put this motherboard in, just for a quick word of warning, if you're using a different board that's got a backplate on it, make sure it's not going to interfere with one of the pre-installed standoffs. This motherboard, we're going to need all 9 that are installed already, so that's really nice and convenient. But you don't want to have one of the standoffs scratching or damaging the back of the board if you don't need it, if you've got a backplate on there. You can potentially cause shorts as well if you have a standoff installed to a motherboard where there shouldn't be one. So just a word of warning. So I'm going to take off this peel. Before we put that in, because we won't be able to get it off once we've installed it. I also like that there's a little studded standoff. Corsair do this with their cases as well, so it actually sits in. You can even install it upright if you want to, but personally I just like doing it flat. So let's get this into place. Okay, so now I'm going to get this all screwed in the 9 corners. So now we've got our motherboard installed and I've already got the standoffs on there, so we can easily put the top of the cooler down. I'm going to do that right now. I've got these top screws ready, so we're just going to pop that on the top and then screw it down with these nuts. So the H170i has got the pre-applied thermal paste, which is nice and convenient. The correct orientation will be with the pins at the bottom, and then that top will then go on like that, and then the cables go upwards. So we'll just pop this down on the top and then get our thumb screws. Just going to lightly thread them for now in opposite corners. Again, tighten it down in a diagonal pattern. Not going to go all the way just yet. I'm going to get it a little bit more secure before we really finally tighten it down. There we go. So this is the Phanteks Revolt X. This is a dual system power supply. We will be using that for the dual build that I mentioned later on, but we're going to be using the first system cables for this one. So here we've got one of our CPU cables. This is a daisy chain one, so we've got all the power we need for the 12900K on one cable. Then we've got two PCI cables, which are daisy chain, so there's two on each. We need three, so it's going to be one. We'll have to tuck away a little bit. Then we've got our SATA power for the Corsair command core. PCI, we use the bottom ones, and then our SATA one we'll put on the other side. Yeah. Now this case has got a nice dust filter for our power supply, so it's going to get some nice fresh air. So I'll drop that in and slide it along. So these are the screws I'm using for the power supply. You might see them commonly used for hard drives as well. Okay, so a little bit of a rat's nest of cables, but I'm going to run the PCIe cables up through here, which are going to be for our graphics card. Our 24 pin is going to come out from the top grommet. Our 8 pins are going to go up through and under. Now this is a ML140 that comes with a Corsair Elite 170, the standard edition, not the LCD. So I'm just going to mount this on the back here as a outtake, and then we're ready to look at putting our graphics card in. This is the ASUS ROG Strix 3080 Ti liquid cooled. This is the overclocked edition from the factory, which has 12 GB of GDDR6X memory. I think I'm actually going to use a vertical mount as well. So I've got my riser cable. Now one thing to note if you're going to do this yourself is you need to get a Gen 4 cable riser rather than this, which is a Gen 3. You will have to go into your BIOS otherwise and set the 16X slot to run at Gen 3. Otherwise it might not recognise your riser card. A little bit strange doing it from this angle, but I'm just going to support the card, install it this way so the radiator doesn't dangle around. So we've got our riser, and I'm just going to clip that on. Clip, there we go. So the radiator for the GPU needs to go in the roof of the case as well, so we need to get everything else plugged in. So let's get these 8 pins in. Oh, that needed some persuasion. So now that's both in at the top, and then we're going to move on to the 24 pin to make sure that goes in. But this is going to be a lot easier than 8 pins. Make sure it clicks. There we go. And push the rest through. So I've undone the cables for the pump top. This is a speed sensor, that's this cable here, but it's so thin. I'd really like to see it all sleeved with the rest of the cables rather than just its own one. So these cables are all going to go through the 8 pin where that went. The RPM sensor is going to go into one of the top 3 pins, but I should try and hide it somehow. And I shall then just go on like so. It's magnetic as well, which is really nice. Makes it so much easier. And I shall run this cable up onto one of the headers. There we go, that's that all done. Getting there. So for our graphics card radiator, I'm going to be putting this in the top and then screw it in with the included screws from the cooler box. I'm actually going to be using a couple, that's all that was in the box, but it is a loan sample, so don't worry, if you buy one you will get more with yours. So it's pretty hard to see, I've just had to pick up my light to try and show you, but the 8 pin connectors for our graphics card are here. So I'll plug those in with our cables here, and then we just need to do the front panel stuff, and then we're pretty much done. So our AIO uses the USB 2, which is 2 to 1 header, so I'm going to get that plugged in at the bottom, push that in. So that's just going from the header down into this cable management slot to the side, and we'll plug that in on the back. So our USB-C headers are going to be a little bit tricky to do, as we need to really train that cable round, but it should be okay. There we go. So USB 3 header is just a little bit further down from the USB-C one. Let's try and get this in carefully, and a nice little click. Little block that ASUS included in their motherboards. This just allows you to put all the front panels onto one little connector, then that all goes on in one go rather than you having to try and find of all the pins on their own. Obviously if you want to have a little bit more tidy cable management, you can just put them in individually, but for the sake of this video I'm going to make it nice and easy and just use this little header to put it all in one go, just like that. So you can see on the back there's a lot going on, but it's not quite as bad as it looks. I have routed the USB header, which is 1 to 2, which will be for our Corsair AIO, The actual cable for the pump is here, which is like a kind of proprietary connector, which will go into our Corsair commander. Just goes into the end using the white dots. That goes in there like that. Then we've got all of our RGB connections for our fans here, which are over here. It's simply labelled on there as well. Then the other side has all of our 4-pin fan power. So the one in the back of the case and also the 3 front ones will all go into there. All we need to power that is a SATA off our power supply that we've already connected. Just a case of plugging things in, similarly to what we did in the front of the case. I'm also going to leave a link to Joe's 2 cents cable management guide in the description if you want to have a look at how to really be neat and tidy with your cables. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to skip that part and just get into the actual build and benchmarks. So let's see if she boots. Okay, oh yeah, that looks like a good sign. Okay, fans are spinning. And we have RGB. Oh, it's looking very tasty. So when we get our post screen, we're going to mash delete to get into the BIOS. There we go. Okay, so into the BIOS, we're going to go along to Extreme Tweaker, AI Overclock Tuner, and we're going to set to XMP1, which will be 6000 megahertz on our Kingston Fury memory. And then we're going to do F10 and then OK. That will set it to its rated speed, otherwise you're going to be stuck at the default, which if you're paying for extreme memory like we've got in this system, then you're going to want to get the most out of it. So make sure you enable XMP. So that will then restart, and I've saved some time by installing Windows prior to filming this, so we'll be into the desktop straight away. Okay, so first of all we're going to do Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I've set everything to highest because it's a 3080 Ti liquid cooled, why not? So let's see how we get on. I've put frame view as well in the corner. Tomb Raider does give you pretty accurate results anyway though. I'm going to lap up this graphic experience because I won't be playing anything quite this high powered for a little while, so I will make the most of it. So there we go, average frame rate of 174 frames. We've got a minimum of 151 and a maximum of 266. It's one of the nicest looking games that we're probably going to be playing today, and it's performing absolutely fantastic. So let's go on to the next one. I think we'll try, how about Dirt next? So we're going to go for VSync off, obviously. Dynamic resolution scaling we'll do. Final resolution is fine because that's set to 1440 as our monitor is. Okay, so there you go. Everything's set to ultra high. It does look nice. I've not actually managed to play this game in such a high resolution yet, so this is a new experience for me as well. I'm averaging 237 frames. I wasn't even looking at where I was going now. I was concentrating on the frames. Temperature wise, again, we're still at 49. No temperature than that at all, which is nice. So we're staying cool. Yeah, our frames are high. Yeah, 250 frames, so I don't think we really need to do much more than that. Let's move on. So on to Apex Legends. While this loads, I'll show you the settings I've gone for. VSync disabled, of course, and then we've maxed out everything else we possibly can. Very high spot shadow detail, so this should look very nice. So we're averaging 143 frames. So if you are, again, running a 144 Hz screen, then you can run this on full maxed out detail without any problems at all. Through the Warper, let's see, we can actually get a kill here. Not played any shooting games for a while. Flawless victory. That's my first victory in this game, I believe, as well. So, but anyway, there we go. So 144 frames, averaging out, 100% of the time. Got to 46 degrees on the graphics card, so still very cool. So yeah, let's jump into our next game. So on to Far Cry 6. This is another game that I've yet to see in full quality, so we shall max everything out. Let's add all of the extra extended features just because we can. Currently running 120 frames, a little bit of a dip there down to about 110, but that does look gorgeous. All of those water reflections look very nice. Here comes the explosion. Nice, looks good. The smoke looks great as well. So averaging a frame rate of 111 frames, maximum of 127 and a minimum of 100. So again, we're seeing anything less than 100, so really great results, especially that I've literally cranked everything up that I possibly can. So I was, expecting a lot from the graphics card, and it did do well, so very, very pleased. So onto Valorant, we're going to turn everything up. Let's just turn everything on that we possibly can, and we're getting a ridiculous average frame of 630. So yeah, even a 280 hertz screen will be sufficient with this game. And we're not even dropping below 600 frames. There's 700 there. Yeah, I didn't expect Valorant to be a difficult task for the 3080 Ti. So Far Cry 6 and Tomb Raider were more of a stress test for this graphics card, but we're going to really push it and go for Crysis with the original Can It Play Crysis meme. So if we go to the advanced setting, we can actually choose the Can It Run Crysis setting, which is obviously going to really push the card as much as possible, even gives you a warning. So yes, we are going to use that. So I've got a little bit further to the game. So although it is very dark and it's a bit difficult to see things at the moment because of where I am in the actual campaign, it's been staying at no less than 100 frames, which is great considering we run it on the Can It Run Crysis mode. So obviously the most demanding game that we're going to be testing in our little selection today. So now let's check out our temperatures, but also throw in Cinebench for anyone that's wondering more about the actual CPU performance and graphics, and maybe that's doing creative work or rendering. It's sitting nicely between a 32 core Threadripper and a 24 core Xeon processor, so a score of 26,328. It's actually higher than the 24 core Xeon processor, so that shows how the efficiency and the performance cores of the new i9 work together to give you really great results. So really great performance from the 12900K. So looking at our temperatures using hardware info, the maximum temperature for our CPU was 52 degrees. Then the graphics card reached a high of 52.7, so extremely close in terms of thermals. I think because of the surface area that's on the 420mm radiator for the 12900, it's giving that cool air out up to the GPU after. I'm really, really happy with how this build's turned out. So now let's just do a little conclusion and give you some closing thoughts. So there you have it, an absolutely crazy build with the Intel 12900K and the ASUS Strix 3080 Ti liquid cooled. A big thank you to the other guys that sent parts out for this build as well. So we've got Kingston, Fantex and Corsair as well. One of the high spec PCs we've done on the channel yet, and probably will be for a little while as well. I've also put the RTX motherboard in the bottom, so you can see that's going to be the dual build that we're going to be doing soon. The case for one system on its own is a little bit too big, because obviously you've got a lot of blank space at the bottom if you don't have an extra system in there. So if you are doing a single rig, I'd just recommend getting a 420mm radiator case. It's just a bit bigger on the top, just doesn't look so squashed, but as you can see when I've put the extra system in the bottom, it'll look a bit more even. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments box below, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and ding the bell so you don't miss a future video. I'll link all the relevant parts and things down in the description box below if there's any you want to pick up. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.